Welcome to the Town of Derry Planning Board meeting for February 19th, 2025. We traditionally start our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would please rise and join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Start with some housekeeping for members of the public who are here. If there's an alarm activation, the exit is to the rear of the hall where you came in, or to my right and your left. The elevator will not operate while the alarm is sounding, so if you require assistance, please wait for first responders. The planning board voluntarily continues to offer remote participation. If any member of the planning board participates remotely, vote shall be by roll call, and I believe we have Mr. O'Connor on remotely tonight. To attend the meeting using a computer or smart device, you visit www.zoom.us and you enter the meeting ID 754-663-912. You may also get audio participation only by telephone by calling area code 646-558-8656, same meeting ID 754-663-912. If you have technical problems getting into the meeting, call 603-845-5585. If you are on the telephone, hit star 9 to raise your hand to be recognized, and once recognized, hit star 6 to unmute yourself in order to be able to speak. I will now introduce the staff and the members who are present tonight. To my far right is alternate Mr. Mousy, who I will ask to sit in the absence of Mr. Feinauer. Planning Director, Ms. Robidoux.
Good evening.
Town Administrator Representative, Mr. Chase.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Healy. Our clerk, Ms. Wilson. And to my far left is our town engineer, Mr. Leroux.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Fishman.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Myers.
Good evening.
And Secretary, Mr. Malaby.
Hello.
I'm Dave Nelson. I'm the chairman. First item on our agenda is escrow, and I don't think we have any escrow tonight.
Not
Great.
this evening.
We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. February 5th, planning board meeting, February 12th, workshop meeting, and the Gateway visioning session, February 10th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any errors or omissions?
Just one, I believe just the header should be changed. It's a Scrivener's error. We can take care of that for the visioning session. It should
And I
be
think there were
session
some
2.
changes made to the workshop notes, and they were highlighted in red in the revised copy I saw, so we would be approving those as amended. So can we have a motion to approve the 3 sets of minutes with the minutes of the February 12th being amended and the Scribner's change in the visioning session?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Malaby. Seconded by Mr. Myers. I will call the roll. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor, are you there?
Yes.
Yes. And the chair votes yes. The minutes are approved. We don't have any correspondence this evening. So the first item of business is our annual review of the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2031. And we have our town administrator and chief financial officer here to make that presentation.
Well, good evening. Dave Karen, Town Administrator, and Mark Fleischer, who's our CFO, who deserves a lion's share of the credit for pulling this together, meeting with all department managers, and trying to craft a document for our expenditures over the next 6 years. Now, under state statute, this is actually a responsibility of the planning board. However, under our charter, they actually revised that process a bit and brought it within the office of the administrator. but requires consultation with the planning board prior to submitting it to the town council. The process is similar to previous years, where again, Mark pulls it all together, receiving all the different requests from various departments. They're reviewed in relation to need, existing service and available revenues. Mark and I review it. The plan goes to this board this evening, and then once we receive any comments you may have this evening, then we will submit it to the council by April 1st, which is required, actually by March 1st. We have to submit it to the council 30 days prior to us submitting the annual budget to the council, which is due on April 1st. So they'll receive it March 1st, and then they have to adopt it with or without modifications per the charter by June 1st for the ensuing fiscal year. The funding mechanisms really haven't changed. The water and wastewater, they're ultimately funded predominantly by the wastewater and water users through rate charges. There is some state aid from the Department of Environmental Services, primarily through principal forgiveness. And there is a little bit of ARPA fund remaining. As you may know, with the ARPA funds, they had to be obligated by this past December 31st, and they have to be expended by December 31st of 2026. And we do know that there are a couple of projects currently in the pipeline with water and wastewater, which has some ARPA components to it. Cable projects are funded through franchise fees and an annual grant from Comcast. And we actually continue to use most of our general fund capital projects are from our capital reserve funds, which are largely replenished or transfer from our fund balance. For those of you who've been on the board for quite a while ago, I think maybe 7 or 8 years ago, we had zero funding for capital projects in the town budget, with the exception of road reconstruction and the leases for our police cruisers. And so the policy was to fund the capital reserve funds, to fund the capital improvement program to the level, if we could, about $1.5 million. And that was pretty much reliant upon any fund balance at the end of the year, resulting either from unexpended appropriations or excess revenues in anticipation of the projected revenues. So we've been at that $1.5 million level annually. The council approved the increase to 1.75, recognizing the impacts on inflation. I mean, as an aside, that's why you're not seeing all of our public works vehicles in one color anymore, is because a couple of years ago, we'd had to stop ordering the vehicles because nobody can guarantee delivery. So the Public Works Department goes on a shopping trip and tries to see what vehicles are actually on lots, which meets our needs. So now, instead of having just the same color, we have green and white and blue vehicles out there. So hopefully that'll return to normal sometime soon, but we still are seeing some impact on the inflation for our apparatus. And as I just mentioned, several years ago, we had zero into the general fund towards the capital improvements program outside of the roads and the police cruisers. We've built that up over the time with the council support, and now in FY25, that is up to $725,000, which is part of that 1.575 and not in addition to. You also may recall that several years ago, we really got behind, so we had an aggressive schedule to catch up, which we have successfully done so. However, inflation has now impacted our financial projections and the cost of equipment as we move forward. This is a summary of what our plan looks like for the next 6 years. Public Works at 14.6, about $8 million, actually about $9.6 million of that is roads. Our roads are in pretty good shape here in Derry, and it's because of the council's discipline to raise around $1.5 million, $6 million a year to keep ahead of them. Fire is 7.5 predominantly in equipment. We've seen an incredible explosion in the price of apparatus. An engine which cost us maybe $750,000 4 or 5 years ago is now over $1 million. So consequently, we've had to extend the life of those vehicles as well. Police is the maintenance of the communication system and also cruiser replacement, small appropriation for library and IT. Expendable trust is a trust we started about 5 or 6 years ago, and that's a fund which takes care of any repairs small additions and improvements to our municipal infrastructure buildings throughout the community. Water, you can hardly see it, it's about 7.145, and that's a consequence of a bond which the council approved several years ago to extend water to different sections of the community, and also with the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project. If you may recall from last year, that's a project in which Manchester Water Works actually provides water to communities south of Derry. And they need Derry's infrastructure to wheel that water. In addition to the town receiving $1 per 100 cubic feet of water, which is wheeled through the community, that project has also paid for a lot of infrastructure improvements. Phase 1 is complete, and so they can draw about 1 million gallons a day from Manchester, the community south of us. They're now before the state legislature for an additional appropriation of about $24 million to go to phase 2, which will increase that draw from Manchester Water to 3.1 million. On that issue as well, due to our form of government, as like a city form of government where the council can act pretty quickly, is that at the end of last year, we had an opportunity to receive another $7 million in grants for infrastructure improvements. So the council had a quick first meeting for a first hearing, went to a public hearing, and they accepted those funds. That's all part of the phase 2, which is a lot of infrastructure upgrades in Derry, not paid by Derry taxpayers or water users, but paid by others, including those communities south of Derry. Wastewater is about $26 million. There's a couple large projects, but the largest project, I think, on the horizon is we have to reline our 2 lagoons and bring our 3rd lagoon back online. We call those the swimming lanes off of 93 when you're driving by. So that'll happen in the next several years. And again, cables are down a little bit, but it's a reflection of, we continue to see some residents cutting the cord. And just for clarification, there's always some confusion, is that the town cannot, under federal law, collect franchise fees for those people who get their internet from the cable provider. We only receive a franchise fee on the cable. So we're seeing a number of residents who keep their internet with Comcast, but cut their cord for cable, which is impacting our revenues. One thing we have to look at is a statutory debt limit as to how much the state allows us to borrow. For general fund debt, it's 3% of the equalized value as set by the state. And it's really a year behind, so because the state's going to analyze the data and then establish the equalized ratio. So for example, in 2024 was the year in which we revise our values. We do that every other year to keep us close to fair market value. So our actual equalized value now is around 97%. However, the state measures it from the year before the reval, which is about 86%. So we had about $4.9 billion in value throughout the town, which will allow us to raise about $147 million, which you'll never see because the town wouldn't be able to afford the debt service to pay that back. Currently, we've got about $21 million in outstanding debt, so we're using it about 14% of our capacity at this point. And that's what the outstanding debt service is, based upon both the general fund. The Derry Commerce Corridor TIF bond is that bond associated with the improvements on Manchester Road with the Walmart project back, I believe, in 2011. Mark was successful negotiating a refinance of that for 1.6% for the last 10 years. So most of the expense there, that 1.47 is the principal, but there's a little bit of interest associated with that. We also have 2 water system bonds. We have another authorization of the council a few years ago for about $4.9 million in additional water bonds. I don't think have those been issued as of yet? DES?
I don't believe so.
I don't think they have, so we're waiting for DES on that one. And then we have some wastewater fund bonds, which really have a very small balance. And again, that'll increase as we attend to the lagoon project in the next couple of years. Water, I mentioned previously that general fund limit is at 3%. This is the same mathematical exercise. But the state allows you to bond at least 10% of your assessed valuation, which means we could bond up to $491 million. And again, you'll never see that because the repayment both from the tax rate and also from the water users is cost prohibitive. We only have $1,120,000 outstanding. You can see below there's debt to be issued for a number of projects of $4.89 million. The council moved ahead with that project based upon I think it's about an $11 million project altogether, but based on ARPA funds and the Principal Forgiveness Program with the State Department of Environmental Services, it was economically advantageous to proceed at that level. So even with those, we're looking at debt capacity of about 1% on the water side. On the sewer side, there is no limit as long as you incur debt to comply with a DES order to improve your wastewater system, but we only have about $1 million in debt service. The other one which is coming up is the Dairy Commerce Corridor Tax Increment Financing District. You may recall that the town established a district to accommodate the infrastructure improvements by the Walmart project back in 2011. About 5 or 6 years ago, the council extended that TIF district all the way through Crystal and Broadway to the Opera House to take advantage of economic development opportunities and to also connect all of our commercial districts in town. And currently, the TIF debt is 1.47. We expect that the council will issue a bond for a parking garage downtown for about $16 million in the next several months. What's that going to do? It's going to provide parking for the downtown and parking for a multifamily development, which is going to be built on Abbott Court. Repayment of that debt will not come from the general tax base. It'll be funded in a number of different ways. One, the developer is paying a fee for 10 years to purchase a portion of that garage, which will be owned and operated in total by the town. There's also going to be the tax generation from the development around the garage, which is slated to be completed probably in 2027. There's also the existing underlying TIF district revenues, and also we're looking at charging for parking in the garage at year 11, once the developer pays off his share of the garage. It is our estimation that 48% of the 300 spots in the garage will be allocated to that one development. What we anticipate is through a combination of tax assessments on the new development, the infrastructure dedication of revenues from the developer for the garage, and also for the residents of the development, their parking fees from year 11 on, is that total contribution will meet the 48% use of that garage in year 6, and by year 11, the revenues will grow whereby that development itself will pay for 100% of the garage. And again, the garage is going to be used and available for other users throughout the community to support our downtown economy. So you can look for that. It's going to be, as an aside, between that project and the exit 4A on Folsom Road and the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water project on Crystal heading out 28, and also some other water projects heading out 1 or 2. I apologize, there's going to be a lot of excavations and detours in the next 2 years in Derry. It all came together at the same time, unfortunately, but it came together because a lot of outside funds were available to reduce and limit the impact upon a Derry taxpayer. So here's a summary of the major projects for FY26. There are no acquisition of fire apparatus. The two largest expenditures are a 3-year program to replace our personal protective equipment for our firefighters, and also a training facility, which is the picture on the top right. That's always been on the fire department's radar. We can never fund it, and we're proposing a $700,000 appropriation because a private benefactor wants to donate $600,000 of the cost of that project. So, but for that private donation, that would not be on the list, because we obviously have, a little bit more priorities. And then you have relatively smaller costs, like our systematic replacement of our monitors, cardiac monitors in our ambulances, vertical rescue equipment, systematic replacement of our inspection administration vehicles, and a tethered drone for operations and emergencies. Looking at Public Works, replacing a few vehicles. The one on the bottom left this is pictures of all existing equipment, just showing what we're replacing. Bottom left is going to be a new one-ton with a plow and a wing. That's a new vehicle, not a replacement. We picked up another employee last year in the Parks Department to be helping us plow. And this will be a trend going forward. it wasn't but a handful of years ago that half of the snow removal equipment on Derry roads during plow were contracted out. That number is down to between 10 and 20%, because a lot of the private contractors, I mean, they'd make money this year, obviously, but if you look back in the last 3 or 4 years, it's a significant capital investment from these folks to maintain their vehicles, but if it doesn't snow, we don't hire these guys. So we're seeing a lot of these private contractors get away from that, which requires us to up our town force. Typical pickup truck replacement, the one on the top left is a UTV, and the one on the top right is another skid steer. That will be used through all divisions of Public Works throughout the year, but will be stationed at the new fire station in the winter to help with snow removal at that location. Then we also have, we're in year 2 of 4 of $50,000 a year for sidewalk upgrades throughout the community. Another $25,000 for cemetery road repair. The Manning Street sidewalk right outside of this building is going to be funded through the TIF district for $75,000, and our annual pavement management program for $1.6 million. And then we have a number of different improvements and upgrades in our cable division. On to water, wastewater, which is not funded by the taxpayer, but by the water users. We typically fence an appreciable amount of money for water main upgrades. It'll be $300,000 in FY '26. We're looking to replace a pickup as well as a 2013 450 van inspection unit. And the bottom one is a Rockingham Road interceptor. That'll bring the sewer up to the top of the hill. That 6.7 is being funded in a number of different ways. One, we received an earmark through Congressman Pappas and Senator Shaheen's offices for $4.2 million. And the balance is being funded by 2 major sources. One is, we talked about the wheeling charges for water going from Manchester to south of Derry. We successfully advocated with the state legislature to change that law to allow us to use 50% of those wheeling revenues for economic development purposes. So the council approved a vision to apply that towards the debt service in this project. And also, as you know, there's a significant amount of development in South Londonderry, which is all serviced by Londonderry Sewer. And so we negotiated an amendment to our intermunicipal agreement, which was authorized again by change in state law last year, which allows us to place a 15% surcharge on out-of-town wastewater, which will all be accrued to the Economic Development Fund. So those 3 sources of revenue will end up funding the Rockingham Road interceptor, which will open up over 100 acres of commercial land along that corridor. So here's the financial impact of the entire plan. When you look at the debt service we paid, the lease payments, and also any acquisition through capital reserve funds, operating budget expenditures, which are typically shown as the road reconstruction. And so we're looking at a net tax impact of anywhere between $1.14 last year down to $1.08 this year and sliding through all the way to 99 cents. It's not uncommon for the out years to have less of a tax impact because between now and then you pick up additional projects which will essentially levelize that tax impact around, $1.08, $1.10. I'd be happy to answer any questions, take any recommendations to forward them on to the town council.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, and thank you for the explanation of the front loading, which I think you indicated has to do with when plans become ripe and the confluence of multiple projects for which other external funds are available in the next few years. So that answers my question there. With respect to funds that are kept by the trustees of trust funds, capital reserves, expendable trusts and whatnot, do you have any idea what rate of interest we're currently earning on those?
Well, they try to, the custodial bank tries to put them into long-term instruments to get the best rate, obviously. The money, if they leave it in there as cash, it just gets a money market rate of anywhere between, it was 3% and 4% last year. It's going to probably continue to slide down a bit because that's where rates are going at the moment. So what I do is I give them a cash flow every quarter showing them what we're gonna need to cover our expenses, our capital expenses. And that way they can make their decisions on how long to invest and where to invest and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. And with respect to any grant funds which are sourced from or through the federal government, do we have any concern about any of those being at risk in the next, year or two?
Yeah, the only grants we've received was the earmark process at the federal level, and that was structured as a not to increase the federal budget, but to earmark a portion of it for capital projects to be determined at the local level. So I'm not, they get away with from those for a number of years. They brought them back 3 or 4 years ago. Those are unknown. The other one is the assistant to firefighter grants, which allowed us to, replace our breathing apparatus. Now, when you see the ambulance attending to a patient, there's a patient lift now, lifts the stretchers instead of the our personnel doing that, saving a lot of back injuries. So they've been very good sources of revenue. At this point, we just don't know where that's going. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of changes going on down in DC. So hopefully when the dust settles, we'll have a better idea of the sustainability of those grants.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions from members of the board? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were pointing with your pen.
Well,
Mr. Myers.
I said I did have some questions, but I was going to defer to somebody else. I know this isn't the right forum for all of these questions. We're just, here to take a look. So I apologize in advance, and I think you guys have done a great job for the town. But the slide went by too fast. Do we have $24 million of debt in Derry right now? Is that the number? Or did that go by too fast for me?
We'll go back to it. So right now, we have a total of $24 million in debt. That's between general fund, the TIF district, water, and wastewater.
Right. So anybody that says that our budget is balanced in Derry is not accurately portraying the state of the budget. Is that right?
Well, no, that's not correct.
No. So how should I take a look at the fact that
Yeah.
the town is $24 million in debt?
It's
Help me.
it's like when you have your own personal budget
Yes.
and you have a mortgage on your house.
I'm sorry?
If you have a mortgage on
No,
your
I
home.
paid it off, thank you.
But if you have a mortgage on your home and you're earning enough money to pay all your annual expenses
Right.
plus your mortgage, then you're not in a deficit position. So the town government operates the same way.
Right.
Whereby if there are long-term capital improvements,
Right.
it's a way to, number one, spread out the costs, but also, number two, require future taxpayers to pay for a proportionate share of those improvements as they use them when they move to town. So that's why we use debt service. That's why we don't pay cash for large capital acquisitions.
Okay. No, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning the fact that I looked ahead and got my mortgage paid off as quickly as I could.
Yep.
Does the town, and again, I know that this is not the correct forum for this. I know it's the town council, and I would defer certainly to them. But is there an effort to say, look, let's address this deficit and do whatever we can and escalate it as quickly as possible?
Well, it depends upon the type. For example, when Mark refinanced the TIF bond at 1.6%,
Right.
using that as a specific example,
Right.
it makes more sense for us to pay the debt off as it goes. The money, if we had
Right.
it to pay off the debt early, we reinvest that at 3 and 4%. So actually, we're making double what the interest costs us.
Okay. So now on
Yeah,
page 19.
But the other issue as well,
sorry.
just so you know, is that typically we're now issuing our debt through the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank.
Right.
So we can't refinance that or prepay that for the first 10 years. That's why we receive usually a premium. For example, the fire station project is that we floated $20 million for that project. We actually have to repay only 17.5 at a higher interest rate, but there was a $2.5 million premium. And so after year 10, if the rates are preferential, as Mark demonstrated during the TIF bond, you can refinance those or pay them off.
Right, okay. Now, on page 19, and there was a slide here, page 19, tethered drone for $37,100. Now, I know you're not talking about one of those things you can buy at Best Buy or Walmart. I know that. I understand that. But did someone somewhere in some meeting or some analysis take a look at how one drone can cost $37,000?
It's based upon its capabilities, and I can get you more information from the fire department.
And that's just one drone?
Yep.
One drone for $37,000. Okay, and I promise my final question.
Yep.
My final question, I know all about it because I sat here when we took a look at it, but $16 million for a parking garage? Okay. My only comment is that for people that have lived in a place like Philadelphia or New York or Boston, I have an office down at 4 Birch Street and I walk. That's one of my exercises. People see me and say, I saw you walking. I walk up and down at all hours of the day and night. So anybody that says Derry has a serious parking problem, I question it. I know I'm in the minority, but I question it. So $16 million for a parking garage in Derry, I know I'm in the minority, but I question that.
Yeah, it's not a question. I don't think we have a parking problem at this point.
Right.
For example, this new development will infuse about 137 new living units in the community. So they're actually buying 145 of those spaces. And there are other large-scale properties downtown, which when the planning board increased the density from 12 units to 40 units several years ago, that's also going to spur development and use of that garage as well. I mean, the price of garages have gone up considerably. It used to be, right now, it's about $50,000 a space, where, a handful of years ago, it was about $35,000. And I don't know if you've been following the zoning board on the Abbott Court project.
Right.
The original vision was to have a garage and then build on top of it next to the rail trail. However, to hold that weight from all that development, the garage would have to be cast in place, and that estimate came in at $41 million. And as we said, we can't neither justify that nor afford that. So they went back, and now they have this, they call it a Texas wrap, whereby you can access the garage by driving down Merchants Row. It goes into the side of the building, but you can't see the garage from Main Street. It's going to be wrapped by residential units, and that one is a lot less expensive.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I sat here when we took a look at that, so
Sure.
I understand that. And again, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I know I'm in the minority, but anybody who says that Derry needs a big parking garage like that, I question that. I don't think it's really necessary. But again, thank you.
Appreciate your input.
Okay. That's it.
Other comments or questions from members of the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Well,
John O'Connor.
I don't see him on my screen. John, do you have a question?
Yes. I have a
Oh, there
couple.
you are. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple. A lot of them haven't been answered. And Mr. Karen, nice presentation, as usual.
I can't hear it.
I want to go back on your executive summary where you talked about that on the bonds, you have an interest rate of 4 to 5%. With the recent feds making a decision, we're slowly coming down by a quarter of a point. For us, 25 and 26, are you going to still feel comfortable staying at 4 or 5%, or look at lowering that?
Here's the way, I'm not a bond guy. The guys in New York are. Let me give you an example how that worked, John, is that we anticipated a rate for the fire station at about 3.75%, a 25-year bond at $20 million. So we floated the bonds. It was purchased by, I don't know if it was a bank or a clearinghouse. I don't remember back then. It was a bank. And what they do, and I don't know why they do this, so the finance professionals will have to explain it to you. Instead of us paying 3.75% on $20 million, our true interest cost is 3.66, but our bond schedule says 4.5 to 5% on $17.5 million. So essentially, they give you a significant premium. You pay less amount of principal down, but you pay at a higher rate. So our true interest cost was 3.66%. And again, there must be tax implications. I'm not sure. That's why we subscribed with the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank, was able to explain this and arrive at a true interest cost, which was lower than what we anticipated when we floated the bond.
Okay, thank you on that one. My next question is on Abbott Court. I didn't show where that funding is on your chart. I must have missed it. So is that something that's in the operating budget or planned for this year as paying off some of the interest rates?
Yeah, I will check, John, but no, the parking garage is going to be paid for a number of sources. One, from the existing TIF fund, which is outside of the general fund, so it doesn't impact the tax rate. It'll also be paid from parking fees later on towards the year 11 beyond with the debt service, and also going to be paid through a developer contribution of $7,500 per space paid over 10 years. So $750 per space for 145 spaces paid over 10 years.
Okay, I've only got two more, and hopefully quick ones. Going back to the ARPA funds, and I know that we've got an obligation, and we've already have them, you already booked it at the end of December. Now, with what's going on, it's been brought up earlier with Washington DC, if there's a concern that all that money gets pulled, and I also want to throw net zero in there with the money we're supposed to be getting for the solar field. Is there any concern for that from the town council?
Well, the ARPA funds, those funds are in our bank account. We received those in two tranches 2 and 3 years ago. So if the federal government decides to no longer fund that kind of a program, it wouldn't impact us, because again, the funds are in our bank account.
I like that bank. The last one I have is, and it's an individual item, because I'm okay with everything. Question is, and you may not be able to answer it, because it's either a fire or police department. We got money allocated coming up for the communications on the police and the fire with the Motorola's. Are the Motorola's that we're buying now, are they capable of communicating on across channels such as police to fire, fire to state police?
It's my understanding they are, yes.
Excellent. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Connor. And if there's no other alibis, then I will thank you, gentlemen, for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Appreciate your time.
Next item on our agenda, we have a second extension request for parcel ID 31043, 56 Crystal Avenue, from 256 Investment Associates, LLC.
Okay, so for this one, Mr. Chair, this is the Common Man Roadside Project. The applicant is in the process of getting their escrow in place and finalizing the plan. They need a little bit more time on that, so they're asking for a second extension. And I believe there is a representative available if anyone had any questions.
All right, we have a letter in our packet. And they are requesting it be extended to what date?
So this expires on February, so this expires on the 21st of this month, and they are asking for a second extension, but they're asking for a year.
Okay.
I don't think they're
see
going
where
to
it says that, but
meet
okay.
that.
So they're asking for a year on a second extension. Are there questions, comments from members of the board? Mr. Healy?
So typically, I think in the past, we've granted 6-month extensions.
Mhm.
In this letter, they say that construction's anticipated to start in a couple months. Is there a reason why we're going for a year, not just the 6 months?
I would say, it wasn't expressly stated, but I would say that, you know, they're getting their escrow in place, they're finalizing the plan. I mean, it wouldn't, economics are a little not perfect right now, so I don't think it's an unreasonable request to allow them to get the plan in order and the financing in place.
So I would be in favor of 6 months and then having them submit another letter if they need an extension at that time. I think a full year is a little bit long based off of their brief explanation of just needing a few more months.
Do we have anyone representing them available to answer questions?
Is there a representative online on Zoom? I Can't see. Yes. Can we bring Chris into the meeting?
Hi, can you hear me? This is Chris Broyles from GPI.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, we can hear you. Could you just expand a little bit more on the reason why we might need a year as opposed to an additional 6 months for this project to
I
extend
think
the
it's just
approval?
to be conservative. They do anticipate starting construction in the spring. And I think that we were requesting a year if available, just because, like you said, uncertainty. But 6 months would probably be acceptable. My understanding is we can only request 2 extensions. And so we wanted the second extension to be as long as possible in case something comes up.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yep.
You done, Mr. Healy?
Yeah.
Any other comments, Mr. Myers?
Yeah, I'm not sure who it was that was speaking.
Oh,
I
so
couldn't
Chris Broyles is from
Okay.
GPI. He's on the engineering team for the project.
Okay, I would just say that I perfectly understand that financing is a problem right now. I understand that, especially in the economy and things that are changing. And it's a great business. I would just say that someone contacted me recently, knowing that I'm on the planning board, and said, when is Common Man going to open in Derry? And I told them hopefully soon, and they said to me, they have a huge family in this area, Derry, Londonderry, Chester, Manchester, and they said they want this to open as soon as possible. And I would certainly understand that they're having problems. I would encourage them to open as soon as they can in Derry, and so I would certainly be for extending this for a year. If that's what they want, and that's what they need, and that's what they've documented here, I would be in favor of that.
All right, any other comments or questions? I know in the past, when the economy was even a little more difficult and interest rates were high and it was harder to get financing put in place, we did occasionally extend for a year, knowing that, yeah, it's going to be 2 6-month extensions, and that just drags things out. So there is precedent to honor a year request. But my understanding is that they need to have the escrow in place before they can begin construction.
Yes.
And so if the spring start date is fairly secure, then maybe 6 months is enough. If that's aspirational and it might not happen till, next spring, then I can certainly see them asking for a year, so.
Yeah, I think the request is they're being overly conservative. We have been contacted by the engineering firm, and I know that the owner is very interested in moving the project forward quickly. So I think this request is conservative. I think it's more of a just in case for the year. But I think if the board is amenable to perhaps doing the 6-month extension, with the caveat that if they need an additional 6 months after, because they had requested the year, the board would look at a third request.
Right, okay. We can't really bind future board decisions, but we have in the past granted third extensions when the economics dictate it. So what is the board's pleasure in terms of crafting a motion here?
I'm fine with a year.
I am as well.
Streamlines it a little better.
I would second that, if that was a motion.
All right, so Mr. Chase has moved to grant a 1-year extension. Mr. Myers has seconded that. Discussion? Mr. Healy?
Yes, after hearing from the applicant, Mr. Myers, I get kind of those same concerns, people driving down that street, what's going in there, they want to know when it's coming. I'm fine with the year. It sounds like it's going to be probably quicker than that, but I'm okay with it in general.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? None, I'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, thank you on that. Next item is a voluntary merger request for the Howard 2013 Family Trust. Joseph L. and Margaret A. Howard trustees for parcel ID 18012, 5 Howards Grove Road, and parcel ID 016, 1 Howards Grove Road, and I assume that the name of the road has to do with the family that's making the request.
It does. So as the board is aware, the RSAs allow for the merger of 2 or more contiguous lots of land owned by the same person. We don't need public notice. In this case, no mortgage is on the property, so we don't need permission from the mortgage holder. And these lots are located down off, Howard's Grove is off of North Shore Road on Island Pond, not Beaver Lake. These lots have been in the family for a very long time, and they are looking to consolidate 2 of the lots. You do have a depiction of the lots on a site plan in your packet. Merging the lots these lots are in the LDR zone. They're pre-existing non-conforming with regard to acreage. Merging them is not going to violate any existing regulations or ordinances. The lots will still be continued to be served by on-site well and septic systems. And the recommendation would be to approve the merger.
So in terms of crafting a motion, do you have an indication of which parcel number is going to be given up and which is going to be retained?
Yes. On page 2 of your packet, on the notice of voluntary merger, the lot number to be deleted would be map 18, lot 12, which is 5 Howard's Grove. No, I'm sorry, we'll retain 1812, and we'll delete map 18, lot 16, so 5 Howard's Grove will be retained.
Okay, great. So we will then just include that by reference in any motion. Any other questions on this? If not, what is the board's pleasure? Mr. Chase?
So, what will happen with that road that gives access to 13?
Let me look at the map.
I just don't want this coming back later as an issue. I know it's all family-owned down there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm familiar, but
Yep.
looking for the future, how many of these have we dealt with? Yeah.
Okay, so we're merging, that is,
See where I'm talking about?
yeah, I do, yeah, so it's like 42-foot wide, private road.
Right, if they merge the
so-
lots, is it going to eliminate that road so that now the 13 has no access? That would be my only question as to what's going to happen here.
Well, if they're merged, you still have access at,
That's my question,
at
is that,
16, because it all becomes one, so 18,
no, 13 would be left out.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, what is the status of that road? Has that been is it
It's
just an
not-
easement? Is it dedication? What is it?
I honestly have not been, I haven't been down in that area for a long time, but I thought they was basically, they were just accesses to the different camps that were down there when it was a campground.
The last time I was down there, if my memory serves me correct, is that small section of it that it depicts here was actually paved. Like the main entrance coming down in off North Shore Road, it goes to the left for a short distance is, and then I believe that one over there to the right for that short distance was.
Wasn't that access to the parking lot, though, for the beach? That was
Yes, the beach down
public
there.
beach
That was the last time I was down there, was to inspect the
That was
fireworks
down in
barge.
like in the 70s.
Yes, but
Yeah.
I was down there a few years ago, and it was
Okay.
still like that. I just want to make sure that for future, if 13 was to be sold or whatever, we're not going to have an issue with I didn't know whether there was a covenants for a right-of-way, that road would not go away, or what would, I just want to make sure there's no issues that's going to come back and
Yeah,
get another board in the future.
Mr. LaRue, do you have any?
Do you have any
I don't
insight on
believe
that?
that's a town-approved road.
It-
No,
I
it's
think
not.
just an
not.
access drive,
So-
private drive.
And so there's probably maybe at best easements, but I understand Mr. Chase's concern
They're in the
that
deed.
if we extinguish that road right away or easement, by merging 1816 and 1812, therefore potentially leaving 13 without any approved road frontage. I'm not sure we can lawfully make that change.
I think I just answered my question.
The
If you
easements
look,
are in, yeah, the
yeah, if you
easements are
look
in
on
there.
page 2, third paragraph, fourth paragraph, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so included in this conveyance is an easement for recreational purposes,
Yeah,
40
and that-
feet in depth.
All right, so what are you calling page 2? Because I don't see any page numbers.
Okay, if you
On
go,
the warranty deed,
Yes.
after that map, so it would be, if you're looking at the book and page numbers, it would be page 490.
yes.
All right, would you like to read the section you're referencing, Mr. Chase?
It says, included in this conveyance is an easement for recreational purposes, said easement being 40 feet in depth and extending in a northerly direction from Island Pond for the entire width of the above described premises along said Island Pond, wherein no obstructions of any kind may be constructed or otherwise located thereon. Said easement is to be for access to and from the beach area on Island Pond and Island Pond itself for recreational purposes and to be used in common with the grantor, his heirs, or assigns.
So if we just made a note in the motion that the merger of the lots does not extinguish the deeded easement shown in this warranty deed, I think that would probably cover us.
I think so.
Anyone else have questions?
No.
Okay, who would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the voluntary merger between PID 18012, 5 Howards Grove, and PID 18016, 1 Howards Grove. 5 Howards Grove will be retained, and 1 Howards Grove will be deleted. The merger of the lot,
Merger of the lots will not extinguish the deeded access.
well said.
As recorded in the warranty deed book 2524, page 0489.
Second.
Okay, is it moved by Malamy, seconded by Myers? Is there any discussion? Poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, next item on our agenda is architectural review of a sign for Studio 13 Tattoo, parcel ID 30051, 16 Manning Street, Unit 107.
Okay.
And we do have a staff report, and there is a picture on the back.
So the sign is located in the TBOD, which requires review by the planning board. The owner of Studio 13 Tattoo is here if the board has any questions. But basically, the intent of this is to review the sign and make sure that it meets the intent of the district. You know, that it's compatible with surrounding buildings and meets our regulations and complements surrounding architecture. And the recommendation would be to have the board find that to be so.
Okay, any questions on this, comments?
Looks good.
Ready for a motion?
I think it's a very nice sign. I mean, and, you know, I walk up and down that area all the time, and I think it's, I mean, we all know it's right down the street, and it would be a nice addition to that area. That's
Okay.
my only comment.
Who would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move pursuant to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, Article Roman 12 signs, Section 165, 101.5, signs in the TBOD, to approve the sign design presented for Studio 13 Tattoo, parcel 30051, 16 Manning Street, Unit 107, as presented.
Second.
The board finds the sign is compatible with the surrounding buildings, meets the regulations contained in the ordinance, and complements the surrounding architecture.
Now I'll second.
All right, so somebody seconded.
Myers.
I think the first second was from Mr. Fishman.
No,
No?
just Mr. Myers.
Sorry.
Oh, all right.
No, that was you.
So moved by Malaby, seconded by Myers, to grant approval as presented. Pull the board, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Fishman. Mr. Mousy.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Malby.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that brings us to planning director and chairman updates.
All right, so I would just like to remind everyone that we have our third visioning session for the Gateway District will be on Monday, the 24th, in this room, beginning at 7 p.m. So if you can, please come out and join us. We'll be discussing the area, Police Station North, Tinkham Ave, A and B streets, all in that area. The other item that I would like to discuss with the board, we do not have any agenda items planned as of yet for March 5th.
And when is the deadline for new stuff to sneak in?
That was yesterday.
Oh, so we have no agenda items.
We have no agenda items.
So I don't see any purpose to meet just to say hi. So if there's no objection, then we could cancel that meeting.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
What's that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Not for me, no.
Okay. In terms of chairman comments, just remind the public that we still have an open alternate seat, and we encourage folks to go to the town website and apply to join us and help us out. And just remind anyone whose term is up, if you are going to re-enlist, please do so, because the council will make their appointments at their first meeting in March. And that's all I have. Any other planning board member comments? Mr. Myers?
Am I the only one that's having a hard time hearing? I mean, the town manager was giving some good answers to my questions. I could barely hear him. And my friend John O'Connor there, I couldn't hear him at all. I was really straining, and I turned my... am I the only person that's having trouble hearing?
I think the issue is that the only speakers that are on are the ones that are facing that way.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah.
Because I could not hear John at all.
He
And
was quite quiet.
I always listen to him. He's a bright guy. He has a lot of history. And I couldn't hear him at all, and I didn't want to speak up and yell and scream. I mean, and I don't see a place where I could plug in headphones. Maybe I
Mr.
should talk
Provencher,
to
do you have
him
any
after the-
comments on our audibility of remote participants?
I heard pretty good from here.
Proximity to the mic.
I own Prevention Cable Division. I would just say, Mr. Chair, now that we're aware of the issue, we can certainly look at
can hear you.
remedying that.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I can't even hear you now, and I couldn't hear the town manager.
Interesting.
So
Can we take a quick poll? Just to see if it's an isolated incident or something we need to look at systematically. Can everybody else hear me okay? Okay, great. So what we'll do is, in that case, it would be hearing-assisted facilities that we'd be looking at, and we're happy to do so.
So my question is, these little speakers in the metal plates, do they still work?
They are defunct, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
from a prior system analog.
I think the issue is that the sound is facing backwards, and what we're getting is slap back from the back of the room.
Right now-
with echo, it makes it a little hard to hear.
Right now, Mr. Chair, we're in our current phase of our projects involved in the meeting room, we're rephasing and redistributing how the audio works. So soon, right now, it's kind of an antiquated way it's method it's done. Soon, we'll have a separate zone so that these folks will hear sound coming from here and vice versa. Right now, we can't do that, or you'll hear tremendous feedback. It will not be an enjoyable experience.
Oh, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, and I apologize.
Oh,
but,
you're not. No.
Phasing would help. Phasing would help a lot, but is there any way I could just bring in a set of headphones and plug them in somewhere?
We'll work on a remedy and get
Okay, because I
get back with
I
you
used
for
to play
sure.
I used to play bass in a band, and I stood in front of two speakers that were the size of refrigerators. And I've never had a problem until now. I mean, somehow I've never, but I'm having a really hard time hearing, and like I said, I couldn't hear the town manager, and I couldn't hear John O'Connor at all.
When you were in the band, did you wear earplugs?
No.
Oh, well.
Okay, gotcha. All right, no, we will work on that, Mr. Myers, and get
So
back.
Thank you.
I
Get back
will
to you
add
immediately.
something. I used to do a lot of band and audio work, and one of the things that helps is you actually get on the microphone, because when you stand back here, Yeah, all sorts of things happen, and if you turn the gain up, you get feedback. So one of the
Absolutely.
things that people need to learn is like microphone etiquette.
Right. We recommend just about a hand's width or less. So yeah, certainly getting up on that mic will help out, and I'll get better at that.
Well, thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Any other member comments? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
What?
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 We stand adjourned.